over to our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Professor Maureen Hamer.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. And I'll keep my comments brief. We have the honor of the presence of Brian Hanlon here this evening. He's a wonderful sculptor who I had the opportunity to interview at the Gold Star Family Memorial in Homedale last year. And at that time, I learned from him that he at one time was a student here at Brookdale Community College. So we're just so fortunate to have him, and I'm going to turn this over to Brian.
Oh, thanks, Brian. As soon as we said we were going to speak, everyone like, whoa, oh my God, I was all scared. It's still me going around. I was lucky enough to be here in '79, went to Keene, became an ironworker, teamster, back to Brookdale, and then went to Monmouth. It took my mom and I the whole drive up here to figure out the time, because it is confusing. You're like, oh my God, where was I? This place is so important to me, because I went into Tony Blazer's class, and I had a great teacher at Homedale, Barbara Fair. She loved clay. She was a porcelain artist. I wasn't around someone who was into stoneware and just the scene that was there. So that really never left my head as I moved forward. And it was that, I think we're lucky when we get in front of that one teacher that helps us, inspires us to be courageous, to pursue something, you know. And so that's why this is so important to me here. I went on to think I was going to be an art teacher and coach track, but once I got to Monmouth, another teacher got in my path, Marty Bryan, and he started encouraging the figure to me. He said, you could tell stories through figures. I was like, no way, there's no way I can do that. And sure enough, he started really taking, you know, to the academic part of it. And once that, I felt confident with that part, it was right away for me, like with Bob Rogie that I did up the street in Homedale. It was Bob's story that was more interesting to me than the statue at Homedale High School. It was the fact that he went to Homedale High School and then became the greatest javelin thrower in the world. He threw the javelin 312 feet. So for all of you who have ever been to a football field, that's farther than a football field. So a human being took a javelin from Homedale High School, little Homedale, and threw it from one end zone to the next. Like, that's a pretty cool story. He never made the Olympics because he died tragically right before the Olympics. So as a town, we were in shock, and that was my first statue. So it was what a lucky, you know, I feel like, hey Tim, it was, you know, Bob from up above helped me a little, hold some strings and saying, you know, hey, this is a good story, maybe it'll inspire people, and it has over the years. It's really a unique piece. But, you know, moving forward, fast forward, there's a couple of really neat stories in this room. I'm just going to do 3 of them. And I wanted to start with my friend here. This is Earl Lloyd, and he's the first African-American to go on to an NBA court. But he's not, in fact, the first player to sign with the NBA. The real Jackie Robinson of basketball would be Chuck Cooper, who played with the Celtics. And he roomed with a guy named Bob Cousy. It's great history. I mean, this is remarkable, the evolution of how the game is today. But he, in fact, went on the court. He was the first one to play. And I was really lucky at the Basketball Hall of Fame. He was the first person to befriend me. I'm at the Final Four. I'm scared out of my mind because I'm around all these Hall of Famers. I don't know what to do. This guy is he's really big. And he comes over to me and says, you're going to hang with me this weekend. And I didn't know who he was. I didn't know it was Earl Lloyd, this pioneer. So that's how we forged our relationship. And for the next 12 years, we became friends. He recently just passed away. But he got to see this statue dedicated before he died. It's very important. So it's my hope that this sculpture, which has already been important in perpetuating the real story of basketball history. Because how many people even knew that he was the first player to step on the court as a black player? Anyone in the room? Right? Isn't that? But how many people know who Jackie Robinson is? Everybody, right? So that to me was an interesting fact that needed to be, you know, maybe create a monument of it so people pay attention to. Here's the Jackie Robinson. So is Chuck Cooper. So is Sweetwater Clifton. They all, in fact, stepped on the court within a week. And and Sweetwater played for the Knicks. And I can actually just shift right to this gentleman back here. This is Lou Carnesecca. He coached at St. John's in New York. Great coach, epic coach. He's punching the air after Chris Mullins sunk a three-pointer with like 2 seconds left in the game. That is probably my favorite coach's statue, because this little tiny man used to punch the air all the time. I was like, what would that look like in a statue? So the reason I go to him is that the coach who was at St. John's right before Lou Carnesecca is Joe Labchek. And Joe Labchek is the pioneer in many different levels in sports and humanity. He took Lou under his wing, but he's the one who signed Sweetwater Clifton to the Knicks, which was, as you can imagine, crazy controversial. When Sweetwater stepped into the Garden to play, what was it called at the time? Was it called the Garden back then in 1950? He would step in spitting, throwing food at him, throwing drinks at him. And Joe, who, by the way, back then, this was typical for a coach, a chain smoker. Lou told me, he's still alive, Lou's 90, he used to have burn marks in his pants because Joe Labchek was such a nervous guy coaching. He smoked on the court, by the way. So did Brett Auerbach, had a cigar. So he used to burn his pants because he wanted to win, but he also had this situation with Sweetwater Clifton where death threats after every game. And he's like, he is not going off the team. I'm pushing forward with this. So I wanted to line these guys up like this because this is really important pioneer stuff. That when these stories are told and the education's out there, then it's easier. You know, everything is, we can move on better and be less knuckleheads. So beside being a great player, by the way, Hall of Fame basketball player, played for the Pistons and coached there, Hall of Fame coach, started a little sport called basketball in Spain. That kind of caught on, you know, they're some of our great players. But just a prolific man, a prolific coach. And I got to know both of these guys, very special. Now, it's my hope that St. John's gets their act together and dedicates that statue before he's not here. Because it is tragic when they are not there for the dedication. And that would switch me over to this one, which is my most recent dedication. This is Coach John Thompson of Georgetown University, which is an elite school that has created some great thinkers in American history. And he turned it into a superpower in basketball. It's a tiny little Jesuit school in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. So this man, again, I didn't mean for this to be a theme, but it's becoming that he told me in confidence, he also got death threats after almost every game. This was a very protected guy, and he still is today, because of what he was trying to do by taking a basketball, going into a ghetto, and saving a life of a young man with a basketball. And that's what he did. I mean, he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, is equal to anyone else with how many lives this person saved, and also kept up with these kids in their adult life to see that they're good citizens, which he still does today. Amazing, amazing guy. Now, he called me to his office when the school commissioned me to do this, and I was kind of scared to meet with him. He's a very intimidating guy. And the reason he called me to his office was because he said, they want you to do a statue of me. I need you to do a statue of Our Lady of the Rosary to distract from my statue. So he commissioned me to give a statue to Georgetown University of Our Lady of the Rosary, which is there at the basketball facility at the same time I was doing this. Coach Thompson. Isn't that cool? So if you ever go to Georgetown, there's a new basketball facility. It's the only one in the country, by the way, that doesn't have a name on it of a very big patron. To get your name on the building, of course, you should give money to a school or something like that. That's the Coach Thompson practice facility. It's the only school in the nation to do something like that because of what he did in principle. And it's a good read. You could definitely learn something by reading not just the press, because the press really didn't do him justice, but if you can find some good books about the real side of Coach Thompson, who he was, unguarded. because he had to keep his guard up to stay alive, literally. And then next to Coach Thompson is Jerry Coleman, another great story. You could certainly stay there, that's good. And this guy will really piss you off because he was able to win 4 World Series rings and voluntarily serve in the armed forces twice. I mean, it'd be hard to even make the major leagues. But he makes the major leagues, and the teams that he was on with the Yankees, these were the best teams ever. And he played second base, he was amazing. 4 World Series rings, and was in World War II and the Korean War. No one has ever done that, voluntarily. And we know that Ted Williams served, but it was not voluntary. This was 2 voluntary serving to our country in military and also winning a World Series. When I met with him, I had this picture of him turning a double play. He's up, he's like 10 feet in the air, jumping over somebody. I got a little feedback. And it's like, oh, this is a great picture, Jerry. We can have you up in the air. And I always try to make something exploding underneath him to keep him up in the air. And he said, no, I want to be depicted as a soldier. That was like the proudest moment of my life. 4 World Series rings with the Yankees. So I love that story, that he chooses this. And then he was behind the mic for the Padres for 40 years. So what a career. And he chose to be a soldier. So when you walk in Petco Park, San Diego, first thing you see, right there. It's a really cool display. So as you can see, there's sort of a kind of a theme here of these people. I think that more importantly than their accomplishments is the character behind who they became. Maybe not who they were, but who they became. Most important. And they all, by the way, all of them, as I got to know them, had their own personal struggles and had to deal with different issues in their life, and and be in this grace of redemption, and find their own grace through coaching, through playing, through working with others. Mostly really, really neat individuals. This, my friend Brian pointed out to me that we're going to have to change the text here. This is actually the owner of the Broncos, not the, he was never a coach. But we'll help out. I really am grateful to Brookdale for helping me with, it's a lot of information here. You should probably get a degree from filling out all this stuff. I'm pretty sure that they're at least, can I talk to the president about getting somebody 1 credit at least? It's a credit worth of work, Important to note about this gentleman, who I also got to know before he got dementia. He's still alive, but he is it's a terrible, sad disease that he doesn't know who his children are. He's a billionaire, not a millionaire. Owns the Broncos. They've been a little bit successful. Yeah, won a few games, a couple championships. I've done about 40 statues for the Broncos in Denver. Really neat. You go out there, go check out the stadium. They're all over. What I wanted to say about him tonight is that the way he balanced his stress in life was that he discovered the Ironman competition. And the stories that I've been told, by the way, he's the only professional team owner to finish Kona twice. That's that race in Hawaii. And he was doing it when the bikes were like Schwinn, not an Italian bike, And he was probably running in the Nike shoes without arches in them, and he had the hot pants on. It's really not easy to look at. So, security. But interesting guy. One of the front office people told me that every city they went to, he would go for these long runs. And specifically, one time in Oakland, he goes for a long run. He winds up in a ghetto, and he gets lost. And typical Pat Bowling, he goes into a gang situation. They said literally, he was in a gang neighborhood. Winds up getting one of the guys on the front porch to give him a ride back to the stadium. So it's just like he had that grace and that ability to bring people together. I love people like that. That he just saw the good in all these great athletes who, what a team. That John Elway's his favorite story. Well, that's his greatest accomplishment probably in the history of the team. And
someone else who I've been forging a relationship with, and